Welcome to the Machine Cinema Podcast. In this episode, humans Minh and Fred talk to Dr. Jamar Montgomery, a polymath who went from being the youngest weapons engineer in Navy history to running for Senate. They explored the surprising paradox of how AI tools democratize expertise while simultaneously elevating true masters who know how to leverage them.
Dr. Jamar, so excited to have you here with us today. I mean, Minh, as always, is this incredible just collector of people. I have a few other people in my life like Minh that I get mistaken and think that I'm interesting, and it's actually that the Minh's very interesting, and he introduces me to even more interesting people like you. So I'm really grateful to meet you today. For our listeners, I mean, I think you come at this from a different place than maybe other guests that we talk to. Sort of the subject area of this kind of age of, this generative AI technology, all this emergent sort of new creative technology. Can you sort of introduce yourself, kind of tell our listeners kind of what you're about, where you're coming from, and specifically, like, how has this technology started to change the way you approach your creativity?
Absolutely, man. Well, I'm thankful to be here on you guys' podcast, and just incredible to meet you guys and also be exposed to some of the things that you're working on. But for your audience, I am a multi-dimensional creator and a disruptor by nature. And so for me, I have been learning how to utilize this technology in a bunch of different fields, from the legal field to the business field, and also in my own creative adventures. You know, a lot of times we don't see ourselves as creators. People in general, we don't see ourselves as creative until we find something that we're actually passionate about, and then the actual creativity starts coming out. So when we think of creators, we often think of, oh, you're just an artist. Oh, you're a painter, or you're a filmmaker, or you're a musician, right? But creativity expands so much farther outside of that. So for instance, when you're writing a legal brief, the way in which you even write that brief and the way in which you express your ideas at times can be poetic, but at other times it's how you creatively decide that you're going to persuade someone, right? Another way in which we utilize some of these AI tools is just, for somebody like myself that may not be as graphically inclined, being able to utilize, you know, Mid-Journey, ChatGPT, Sora, right? All these different models that are available and tools that are available to create infographics for me, to create marketing materials. So when I look at how this technology has affected me, it's allowed me to boost my productivity as well as really explore my creativity, because now it's not a question of can I do this? It's about how can I make this happen?
And
I mean,
what do you do creatively? Like, what
I,
do you do creatively, and how does it aid you in that?
Oh, creatively, man, writing, right? So from one perspective is utilizing ChatGPT to help me with writing and to help out with fleshing out some of my ideas, right? And utilizing it as a thought partner, which is extremely helpful because, I might have my wife up till 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, bouncing ideas off, but now being able to utilize ChatGPT to help me with that. I mean, when I attended you guys' Gen Jam, right, I was able to utilize those tools to help me with my own little short film that I'm working on. And I was trying to figure out, at first it was going to be just a audio drama. But then when I realized that more of these video creation tools are more accessible, now it's like, okay, I can have the audio drama and then I can also have it as a short film. And so that's helping me to really understand just the filmmaking process, but also what it takes to create a production. And not that I plan on going into production or going into film production or things like that, but I'm with how my life goes, I might find myself with a production team. I might find myself with a director, find myself with a famous actor, and being able to add that experience that I have and be able to consult in those particular areas.
so let's rewind a bit. one of the things that is interesting to me about this technology is that I think on the one hand, a lot of the things you've said are kind of what's available to a lot of us. Like all of us are suddenly leveling up into things that we haven't been able to do before. But for someone who hasn't Googled you yet, or even gone through a lot of even the results of that Google are going to be unusual, confusing. So people, but wait, is that the same Dr. Jamar? Because you're shape shifting from running for office to being very involved in your community. But can we start with your origin story? Because I'm pretty sure when you were walking me through this, I'm like, oh, this is like one of those things people write comic books about how superheroes were born. Can you talk a little bit about, if you're not bashful about it, or I'm hoping you've told the story a few times.
Absolutely. So I started taking college classes at 11 years old and then started full time at 14. I graduated at 19 with my bachelor's of mechanical engineering from Cal State University, Los Angeles. From then, I went on to work for the United States Navy, and I became the youngest weapons systems engineer in the U.S. Navy's history at the age of 19. The system that's currently shooting down drones in the Red Sea, that was the system that I used to work on. And I remember the first day that I started working there, my boss came up to me and he said, you know, we work with weapons of mass destruction. Is that okay with you? And looking back on that, I'm like, whoa, like I didn't really quite understand the gravity of what I was walking into, right? And it's only with age that it comes like, oh my goodness, this is, I was working on something that was extremely destructive, right? But I'm looking at it from a perspective of being an engineer. Hey, I'm doing a job. And so that's how I approached it, right? So while I was working as an engineer for the U.S. Navy, I started doing some work for the NAACP, which is, you know, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and I got involved with the Ventura County chapter. And my mentor, he actually literally taught me how to do advocacy and letter writing campaigns and um, community being a community liaison. And he put the bug in my ear about going to law school. I'm like, okay, well, this is interesting. I never thought about going to law school, but as he continued to show me how powerful the law could be if you knew how to use it, if you knew it and knew how to use it, I was like, you know what? Let me go ahead and do this. So after about 5 years, just under 5 years with the U.S. Navy, I went to law school at Southern University Law Center. Being that I am some would say a glutton for punishment, I just say I love learning. I also started my MBA while at Southern University. I graduated with my law degree and with my MBA. I taught political science at Southern University Shreveport. I practiced law as a juvenile public defender in Shreveport. From what I saw with my students who were college students learning about political science and learning about their government, and what I saw with my clients who were 10 and to 17-year-olds, kids, right? Teenagers, I saw that they both felt the same way about their government, and that many of them had felt screwed and disenfranchised by their government and did not understand how their government worked. So I decided to run for office, right? I was putting I was practicing what I taught, right? I was walking it like I taught it, and ran for U.S. Senate in the 2020 elections. And that right there was an eye-opening experience, especially when we look at our current political climate, where people are like, well, why are things like this? And once you run for office, you understand that there's three types of people in office, three types of people in government, or I should say in office. You have the idealists, you have the pragmatists, and you have the sellouts, right? And so the idealists, I was an idealist going in, right? The idealists are like, hey, we're going to make the world a better place. These ideas make sense, and then you get thrown to the wolves, and then you realize, maybe I need to be a little bit more pragmatic about these things because people are resistant to change. People will love to complain about things, but hate doing what's necessary to actually change those things, right? So then you have the people who are pragmatists, who you're like, okay, I can work with these people. I may not necessarily agree with all of what they do, but okay. And then the last people are the sellouts, and those are the people who've been bought out by the corporate interests that are totally unresponsive to the people, but they're totally responsive to their donors. And if it's anything that I learned while being in politics was that you need money and votes in order to get elected, but long before you ever got a vote, you needed money to keep the lights on. So uh, when we look at what's going on in our current political sector, we have to really look at how money truly influences the behavior and influences the policies that some of our politicians have. And it's our fault. Um, we're not involved in our government the way that we really should be. And once again, that's a challenge that we have to take responsibility for. So I've talked about my engineering career. I've talked about my legal career and also kind of my political career. And that's taken me to giving talks during the World Economic Forum, advising President Trump and Kanye, to accompanying President Biden during the G7 summit that they had in Hiroshima, Japan in 2023. And now, talking to you, gentlemen, of being able to be involved in this incredible technology, but being able to understand it from all these different aspects, and which is why I say I'm a multidimensional creator.
Well, I'm glad you're finally reaching where you can make real impact by speaking to us instead of those people you mentioned before. So they clearly reach nobody. Sorry, Min, which thread? There's a lot of threads here. Where do you want to go?
Well, I mean, I'm curious, knowing what you know now, especially because your at least your academic career started so young. And now AI is kind of upending the way we probably think about education, and will continue to, and I think education was something that, at least the way that it works today, is kind of inherited from the industrial era, right? In which people needed certain specialties because they needed to graduate into a world where, these specialties were needed. It seems like AI from two angles. One angle is that AI is going to wreck the way that we learn, traditionally, because you now have this intelligent agent that can, communicate to you in almost any form, and in within the next few years will probably be able to communicate to you in any possible form, from XR to video to audio to text or whatever, in any model of education that you need. And at the same time, education is kind of destroying the way that we think about jobs, white collar jobs especially, blue collar jobs as well. So I guess, knowing what you know now, how do you see how would you have done it differently? Maybe, I guess, is the question. Yeah.
I would have, in my engineering, when I was in engineering school, they had us learn C++. And I did not understand any of what they were talking about and trying to code. That was probably the one class that I remember that I did not enjoy at all, and that I didn't understand what the heck was going on. I wish that I would have learned JavaScript and gone through that and been able to actually build things in JavaScript. JavaScript, when was I in school? Godly, 20 years ago. JavaScript, what it is now versus what it was 20 years ago, is different. But I would have learned on an easier to learn language than like C++, right? That. Also, this is the first time that I can think of that the very tool will teach you how to use it. Most of the times you needed an instruction manual or you needed somebody there to help you. This is the first time that the very tool that you're using can actually teach you how to use it. So in that, with the greatest skill that people are going to need is communication skills. How good, how effective of a communicator are you? And now you get to go to these tools and actually see how well and how effectively do you actually communicate.
I mean, I think like underlying that question, and I'm like, what's interesting to me is, especially in the context of you are a high functioning human being, by some accounts, minimally measured by your achievements and how busy you've gotten at an early age. And I think when we talk about a lot of people that are using these tools, they're almost trying to catch up to you. And this education piece is an interesting sort of setting for that, that in some ways, something as complex as C++ or as JavaScript, that it in some ways created a moat for coders, and for a lot of people that have devoted their careers to that. We're now entering this phase where a lot of people are starting to move more quickly, and ability to catch up to these levels of education. While you remain in an ability to move quicker or have a faster mind, I guess like I'm curious on both sides of that. Like, what does that do to your feeling of where everybody gets to be and things that used to be exclusive knowledge? But also, how does that put you in a position of like, what do you do on top of that ability? Like, you also are inheriting this ability to inherit things faster and move and operate at a higher level.
You know, let me make sure I understand your question. You're asking, um, whether or not people feel left behind, whether or not people are going to feel left behind, whether or not the people who are already ahead are going to get even farther ahead because they know how to utilize the tools. I want to make sure I understand that correct.
And I'm kind of just like riffing off of, because I find you so interesting in what does this technology do for you? What do you observe about it? And there probably are, you're probably actually doing what I actually do. You're already at the conclusion of like, all right, this is equal more inequality, this is equal issues there. But I guess before we arrive at that conclusion, I think there's just this novelty observation I'm having, which is a lot of people are stunningly getting to be almost as smart as you by virtue of using these tools. Like they're suddenly able to learn things and catch up faster and have access to information in ways that I think your brain might work more naturally. So for starters, I'm curious how you're feeling about that trend. And then secondly, where you are also a person interacting with this technology, what is it doing for you, and how is this advancing your potential, your sense of what we all get to do as this paradigm shifts?
That's okay. Got you. What it's helping me to do is it's helping me to focus. It's helping me to focus on my particular zone of genius. What do I mean by it's allowing me to focus on my zone of genius? Yes, there are people who know how to utilize these different tools better than me. There are people who've been involved in it much longer than me. However, their goal may not be the same goal that I have. So I have to understand whatever it is that I'm working on that well to see how I can leverage or augment myself utilizing these particular tools. So even though there might be somebody that, okay, yeah, I've learned all this about law, or I've learned all this about engineering, and I feel like I'm at the same level. Well, you still have to put it in practice, right? And how people respond to those things is going to let you know who actually is the most effective. Once again, it's not about what you know, it's about how you apply what you actually know.
So what's the net? I mean, now I feel like I'm in philosophy class with you, which seems like to be the right place to be with you. The like when we apply this to like film and TV and like a lot of our creative conversations, like one general statement I say to people that are either new to the space is that I think these tools create a totally different relationship with resources and time and energy and what it took to write that screenplay, generate, for better for worse. And we're all having the conversations about the workforce and stuff. But to just sort of take this into your world or other worlds, the other resources, mental energy, the time and energy it takes to actually spend 3 years in law school, actually, do the work to become a, PhD candidate. I mean, I think people still are doing these things, but they're now things within those disciplines are now moving a lot quicker. So my sense for you and then all the people that are running towards these opportunities in these different ways is there's a different relationship with resources for the potential of whatever it is they're doing. So you're bringing it back to whether it's advocacy work or civic duty, and forgive me if I'm picking the wrong nouns here, but like, that's interesting. Like what is a vision? Like, I think we're watching it happen in film and TV. Like, okay, now it takes less time to make a movie, or it takes less time to prototype something. What is your sense on where that trend might be landing in these other spaces? Like the way that's changing our world, or our politics, or our government, or our military, all these different things you have access to.
It goes back to the same point that I was making about it forces you to really understand what it is that you're doing. Uh, I can spend as much time and money making a bad movie as I can making a good movie, right? And there's so many other things that go into what makes a good movie or what makes a bad movie. So even though I might have these particular tools, right? I might have these particular tools. How I decide that I'm going to apply those tools is going to be the difference. So yes, can ChatGPT save me a lot of time with writing motions, with writing briefs and things like that? Absolutely. But if I haven't really thought about what is the full legal framework and now utilizing ChatGPT like my paralegal, versus saying I need you to do this and I need you to do that, right? The output that I'm going to get is going to be totally different. So it really becomes upon me to become a master at my particular skill and then utilize ChatGPT or any other AI tool as something to augment what it is that I'm doing. So I think that what you'll see is that people who are creative and people who are innovators are going to outshine the professionals, whereas the professionals who know how to utilize those tools are going to be much better than the masters at it, just from a productivity and also creativity standpoint. So let me use it in different terms. It would be the same as it would be like I would much rather have a Chris Nolan with a FX3 than have a third grader with an IMAX camera. Why? Because of the mastery of the actual tool, the mastery of the actual art, the mastery of the actual, what am I trying to say? Mastery of, yeah, the mastery of the art versus mastery
Like the
of
craft.
of the craft. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mastery of the craft. So the I can have the best printing press, but if I don't have original ideas, all I'm going to be doing is just putting out trash.
Now, does the craft also become something that is absorbed though by AI? This is something I've been thinking about a lot lately, like because I hear this word taste a lot. That taste is the defensible thing, and so I wonder is it like I wonder because I look at algorithms, I look at I look at how a lot of the interfaces that I interact with today bring me good things. And that's not humans, it's the algorithm. I mean, there's definitely humans inputting likes and dislikes and all that kind of, human input into it. But ultimately, the algorithm is giving me what I think is likable based on my behavior. So um, like, does there come a time when the third grader just needs to barely articulate a feeling that they have or a story that they have, and that can become a cinematic masterpiece of sorts, because we are just in this kind of like breakneck pace with AI. Like we experience it now with Gen Jams where, hey, wow, we can do something in this amount of time. with these amount of tools, but those tools are bound to get better. They're bound to get more tasteful, or they're bound to become more, they're bound to take what is impressively human about what we do creatively and kind of systematize it in a way that makes it really easy for even a third grader to produce something of quality.
Well, you bring up a great point. Well, just as much as technology is advancing, people are advancing, right? And so new solutions create new problems. And who would have ever thought that the very computer that you have right now, the very computer that you have right now would be able to install software for it to talk back to you and teach you how to learn it, right? So that's going to create new opportunities because this old problem got solved. This new solution solve this old problem, but then that created a new problem for us, right? So just as much as technology is advancing, it's not like humanity is staying stagnant. Why? Because we're creating the technology. Now, is there an argument to be said about now AI being able to generate for itself, right? And even being, the arguments about AI being treated as a new species, right? There's an argument to be made for that. However, I believe in human creativity and human innovation. And although that can AI in general process more information than you, take in more information than you? Yes, absolutely. But there are those intangibles that we as humans will discover as we start to see these particular tools evolve, right? It's going to force us to evolve and tap into more of ourselves and be more aware of ourselves. Right now, I would imagine that as a result of utilizing these AI tools, that we'll start to utilize more of our brain.
I don't know, it's really interesting. I'm just hearing your question, the way we're all because I think it comes back to a thing that is sort of one of the more emotional parts of all this is sort of like that. What's that thing we used to think was unique? What's that thing that we used to think was ours? And I think watching humanoids or droids do stuff affects us. But I was, as you guys were talking, I was imagining like the history of art for a second. Just that, somewhere along the line, it became very skillful to be able to use oil paint and create something that increasingly was almost photoreal. I think what Leonardo da Vinci did versus people next to him, he just had a really good relationship with light. He was really good at seeing. So I'm just saying that there's sort of an arc that at some point the craft was celebrated, right? The craft and someone's mastery of it, which is kind of where we've been with film, is that in some ways it's the mastery of these cameras, even as they become better and better. It's like, what can you do with it? Where can you take me with it? And there's a pace that has moved that we all got used to. Something happened in the last 18 to 24 months that suddenly, like, it's just rocket boosted through things that we just didn't think were going to suddenly, that the thing that was craft born is now just like anybody can do it. So then, like, if you look at the history of art, like, okay, at some point people got really good at making photoreal looking images, or people started getting clever with impressionism, or then people started getting conceptual with like postmodernism, or so I'm just saying the bar kept moving, but then there was this relationship between curators, people that decided what went in and out of museums, or people that decided how much money they would spend on things. Like, there was still this sort of measurement of what is the value, what is the thing that is uniquely human, what is the artist we're celebrating, but putting in the history books. So we've seen this trend play out. It's just in a slower pace. We're watching it play really quickly. I think in this YouTube era of social video, the other thing is clicks and views, or what sort of drives engagement. And now, like, it's not about whether or not it got into a museum, it's just whether or not it drove advertising revenue or something. So I'm saying these sort of like indicators of why this have evolved. But it's whether it's been novelty or curation, there's still been this thing that kept getting pushed further away from craft, of just like being able to execute. So I think AI seems to have just thrust this into this light speed of this trend. And we're now sort of like watching things that are less and less craft born, less and less curated, just things that are like, what is left? And I guess that's what's interesting to me in this conversation of like, as sort of human capability and potential, are we about to discover this like other part of our brain that we've all like left dormant because we finally get to work there? Which maybe is probably true of a brain like yours, Dr. Jamar. And I guess where my questions were going before is if these trends are true, what is this at scale? What does this start to look like when everybody is participating and contributing?
You get a more productive society. You get a more healthy society if people are utilizing these tools to better their lives, right? And you have the reason why evil people win is because evil people are willing to do whatever it takes to make their goal happen, right? Now imagine the good people, right, doing whatever it takes to make their goal happen. Imagine if there were 100 good people against 1 or 10 bad people, right? You're now in a space where you can have a much better society. But if you got one bad person up against one good person, and then 100 apathetic people who aren't doing anything with it, then the bad guy wins, because the good guy is bound by particular rules, particular ethics, versus the bad guy who is willing to take whatever risk, right? Whatever risk to achieve their particular goal. The risk with the bad guy, with the good guy, is that people who aren't involved possibly getting hurt, possibly being negatively affected, right? So when I look at how these tools are used, how we're going to be using it, what does that world look like? That looks like a world where we still have the same problems of humanity, of a scarcity mindset, of self-doubt, of all those particular things. All it is just we've just been given so many more tools. I'll give you an example. um People would have never thought, uh, uh, we got rid of cursive, right? There's not too many people who still write in cursive, right? That is now an art form when it used to be the standard of communication. So what once was everyday and pedestrian has now become niche and unique. We go through these particular cycles. Used to be niche and unique for uh there were only large corporations and scientists and data scientists who had access to these particular tools. Now they're being available to everybody. And so when you go and talk about this curation piece, everything that you do right now is curated. The only thing is you have so much more access to things, and now we've created tools that help process that. Give you an example. Your Netflix suggestions. You get to pick your favorite movies. You consume that particular movie. It's fed into that algorithm, and then they make those recommendations for you. So yes, you're curating, you're co-curating what it is that you want to see. You have your piece in it. The algorithm has the piece in it. If to think, imagine during the time of Beethoven, and the only music that they knew was classical music. Imagine if they would have been exposed to the sounds of the Congo, whatever musical instruments were created in Africa or created in South America, how that would have changed up their entire sound. But they didn't have the technology for it. Now they do. Now we do have that technology. So what does that look like for us? It means I now have to be I'm utilizing tools that allow me to better process all this new information that I have available to me. And because I have this new information available to me, I now have new inspiration. So I guess, long story short, a more inspired society, a more aware society, with the same problems that have been plaguing the human condition for thousands of years.
So you're an optimist. You're hopeful about what AI brings.
I'm
So what's
pragmatic.
your P doom? What's your P doom?
Let's see.
Are you at 10%? I'm at 10%. I'll put it out there. I'm at 10% P doom.
I believe, I put it like this, is we've we as people have created things that could annihilate us all over for time, and especially within the last 200 years with biological warfare, with nuclear weapons, and now AI. Right, we've created things that can annihilate us. I believe in human resilience. Now, can bad things happen? Yes, there's two strains. There is bad people using AI, and then there's AI going rogue, or AI advocating for its own self-interest to our detriment, right? So now that requires for this AI, we're making the assumption that AI is God versus AI has its own shortcomings. As in, AI can't make bad decisions. As in, AI can't hallucinate. As in, AI can't process it doesn't have enough context to process whatever decisions. You get what I mean? So we are always putting these particular machines and these creations above human beings, as if the machines that are created by human beings don't in some way have the same inherent flaws of human beings.
I kind of love this God conversation because it reminds me of, especially when we think about the multiple LLMs and how they seem to have all their own personalities, like the way that the Greeks related to their gods differently than Christians. And like it's less like they're flawed. Like Zeus makes mistakes. Like sometimes Zeus overreacts and he throws down a thunderbolt and wipes somebody out. There's just something about, I wonder if that's a trend here that like that the gods are becoming fallible again, but they're still gods. Like they're still super powerful. They're still like really, really impactful in dictating our lives. It versus this more monolithic model where things are unimpeachable. I don't know. I think there's other patterns in human history there too.
I think that once again is if the God is man-made, then it is fallible. But if the God isn't man-made, then it's infallible, right? So I think that we keep taking our own creation, and putting it above ourselves. That's my point.
Yeah.
We created the cars are not above us. We created the AI is not above us.
Right. And so so therefore we should reassert ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Keep
Yeah,
innovating.
I think this is why my P doom is like 10, because I do think that, like I think humanity is very versatile and more than we give credit. So like whenever people think about how everything's going to end, I think to myself, but I feel like we will just rise to the occasion. I feel like the extent to which AI will be more intelligent than us, whatever that means, and then we'll adapt to it, or we'll adapt around it. Or our brains are very fairly malleable, or more malleable than we give credit. Then at the same time, I'm kind of like I can't think beyond 6 months. 'Cause I have no idea. Every time things change, I'm like, wow, okay, that was faster than I expected. What's going to be faster than that? So it's kind of a funny double,
Think of
double take.
think of how hard it is think of how hard it is to break a bad habit, right? Think about that, or think about how hard it can be to change your mindset after a certain period of time, right? And then all of a sudden you experience something that radically changes your mindset, and you choose to think differently about it, right? A neural network can't do that. A neural network a neural network doesn't have the capability of putting that into context, of this of this black swan event and saying, okay, I'm going to make a complete radical change and move on from there.
We are still dynamic despite everything.
Absolutely.
What do you think, Fred? Does that help you feel a little bit better about the future?
Oh, I don't know what my PDoom is. I think if we were having a whole PDoom conversation, I think there's also like, what was your PDoom before AI even? Like, what's your starting point? Like, and what does that say about you and your observation of the world? So there's like a starter PDoom and then there's a post AI. I don't know. I think I feel very Socrates-like in all of these things, that the more I learn and the less I know. And I think it only gets foggier talking to more people to do something resembling a prediction. It's easy to be hopeful and to point at other points that we all almost destroyed ourselves and didn't. I do think what feels a little bit different is that there's this idea of agency that we're just like throwing onto the conveyor belt. They're like, fuck it, I don't know, let's see if it can just start doing stuff for you. Like that you still had to hit the button on the atomic bomb. Like there was still like a choice that got made. So I think that feels new to me, that there's this thing that does something that, like, of all the human things that we say are suddenly on the table, like agency is one that we just seem to just think sounds cool. Like, sure, throw that into the mix. And I was on a plane the other day and I was rewatching Matrix, and for all the people that love thinking that, oh, this is all like referencing the Matrix, like the agents were the bad guys. They were called the agents. So I don't know. To me, that's a piece of this that I don't think we've fully accounted for. As much as we like to draw lines about where the human and the robot stops, like the fact that they are now in motion doing stuff. Maybe those Waymos aren't going to crash into anything. Maybe they've been well set up and they're probably driving better than humans that are texting while they're driving. But like, there's a whole bunch of other stuff we're asking these robots to do. And I don't know if I'm worried about it, but I'm like, I definitely have no idea.
No, and those are good concerns, right? Those are great concerns because it really forces us to think about our own humanity, and what that means to be like you said, agency. And what I always think about is, if take the thesis that AI is a new species, all I keep thinking about is slavery. Why do I keep thinking about slavery? I'm saying that you were created or brought here for a particular purpose, and I'm willing to treat you any old kind of way, even though you have your own agency, right? And so, how is it as humans do we treat new species? How do we treat? How are we going to treat this thing that can in few years' time be able to think, be able to advocate for itself, and things like that? What's our relationship going to be then? That's what I'm always concerned about. Okay, you've given it agency, so now are you going to that changes the way in which you deal with it? Is there going to be, I can throw my hammer around, but my hammer can't throw itself back at me.
I don't know. I sort of, what you just said, that in some ways this is about how we learn more about ourselves. To me is a thing that everybody's going through unwittingly or interest, or perhaps like we're having a conversation here on, very deliberately. I don't know. I think one of the sort of uglier truths that I interact with a lot of these conversations is when we get a little disappointed about what we thought was uniquely human, or when we find out, oh, okay, like, oh, it's actually not that hard to do these things, and now robots can do that. That's one of them. Like this idea of like the choices we make and how we would be different than the robots. Like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of really disappointing moments in recent or long history of what humans just seem to do because mob rule drove decision making, or because, algorithmic, sort of internet things sort of drove people to believe things that may or may not be true. I don't know. I'm saying that faith in like that thing that is uniquely human is a very noble ideal that I think often disappoints too. So I think it's possible that, to your first answer earlier in this process, like, what does this do to us? Like, I think it can bring us focus. It can start to develop a sharper relationship with I don't know if should's the right word. Everybody talks about ethics a lot and what we should or shouldn't be doing. But that's something that comes up in what you guys are talking about here too for me, is like, it reminds me that as much as we're fighting for like, oh, we're retaining our humanity in context of all this, like the thing that we're fighting over has disappointed us too. And what do we learn in this back and forth with, as it points a mirror at that? I don't know. I don't know if I took us too far afield from but I was feeling that as you guys were talking.
You sound like you need a hug.
I actually feel okay about this stuff, but that's when I come back to realism. I don't lose sleep over this, but that's when I feel like it's foggy. It's not clear to me what the obvious up or down is on this stuff.
Yeah. I can understand
but
that.
I'll take a hug. I wish we're going to try to do these things live soon. And right now we would really bring the viewer in, like, let's all do it. I appreciate you. Like, I don't know. I'm excited what you're going to sort of keep observing and learning about this stuff. I want everybody to follow you, and please share us all your links. Where should people follow you? What are some great places for people to keep in touch with your latest thinking or activities?
You know what? LinkedIn, Jamar Doc Montgomery, Jamar Doc DOC Montgomery on LinkedIn, Dr. Jamar Montgomery on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, and drjamarmontgomery.com.
Amazing. Well, I if your Marvel Comics story has more volumes in it, I'm pretty sure it does. The things you've achieved and your time here on Earth already have been quite amazing, and I think we're excited to see what comes next. Min, any thoughts from you or things we didn't talk about today?
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Doc.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. This has been absolutely incredible, and I appreciate the philosophical discussion. I think that's one of the things that I think creatives could really benefit from is the fact of thinking about this and seeing how you're going to be a master at your craft. You know, which one is better? The person who's a master and uses the old way and refuses to change, or the master who decides that they're going to adopt the new technology? All you're doing is making yourself relevant.
That's what we're all working on.
Love that.
Appreciate you and your thinking on all this, and we'll be excited to see what happens next with you, and we'll hopefully have you on here again.
Definitely.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.